Good. Good evening, everyone. This week's parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu repeats for us Aseret Advarim. But the repetition is not exactly the same as the text of the Aseret Advarim that we have in Parshat Yitro, by the original description that the Torah gives of Ma'amad Har Sinai. And there's a great deal of mystery generally that surrounds the Luchos. First of all, there seems to be a difference of opinion between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi as to what font the letters were that were written on the Luchos. We all know that we have a number of different fonts in Hebrew. So we have what is called Ksav Ivri, which apparently was the original, the ancient font. There are Sidurim that have a table that shows the original Ksav Ivri. And then there's Ksav Ashuri, which is the square font with which we write today Sifrei Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzahs. And then there's a cursive font. When you write, the letters you have a different way of representing the letters than either Ksav Ivri or Ksav Ashuri. So the Gemara says that Ksav Ashuri Olo Imoim Mebovel, and that Ezra is the one that instituted the Ksav Ashuri to be the holy Ksav for writing Sifrei Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzahs. So then the question arises, what did they do before Ezra? So the Bavli seems to be of the opinion, and there are many Rishonim that agree, that say that this is the opinion of the Bavli, that Ksav Ashuri always existed, but that it was used exclusively for writing the Sefer Torah, and that Ksav Ivri coexisted, but it was not the Ksav that appeared on the Luchos. The Luchos was Ksav Ashuri. The Yerushalmi seems to indicate that on the Luchos it was Ksav Ivri, because there are conflicting midrashim. The medrash that we are usually acquainted with says that Mem V'Samach B'Nes Al Yomdim, the letters on the stones, on the luchos, were carved through and through. In other words, it was not engraved on the surface of the luchos, but the letters cut through and through. So, for instance, the samach, which is a circle, right? So the middle part would fall away. You'd have only a hole there. So the Medrash says, B'nes oyomdim. That somehow there was a nes, that the middle part didn't fall out, even though it was not attached at all. And that would be true of the final mem as well, because the final mem is a perfect square. So if you had a perfect square, the whole middle would fall out. And because of the nes, the middle remained, and you had this final mem. So it's obvious that according to that medrash, the font that was used, the ksav that was used on the luchos, was the ksav Ashuri. However, the Yerushalmi has the same medrash, but it says ayin upei the nes oyomdim. And in ksav ivri, the ayin is an elliptical letter that the middle would fall out, and the pei is a circle that the letter would fall out. So it's obvious that it was of the opinion that the luchos were written b'ksav ivri, not b'ksav hashuri, and that when it says that ksav Ashuri Olo Yimoyim Mebovo, that Ezra instituted a change in the Ksav. The original Sifrei Torah, etc., were written B'Ksav Ivri, and from the time of Ezra onwards, he instituted Ksav Ashuri to be the Ksav, the font of Hebrew that is used for the holy books. So that's one matter of doubt that we have as to how it was written, what it looked like. And based on the text of this week's parsha, what was the original text? Was the text that appeared in Chumash Shmos, Parshat Yitro, or the text that appears here in Vet Hanan in the Chumash Dvorim? So we all know a major difference regarding Shabbat, that in Yitro it says Zachor et Yom HaShabbat L'Kadsho, and in Vet Hanan it says Shamor es Yom HaShabbat L'Kadsho. So we again have a famous medrash which was incorporated into L'Chododi. Shomor v'zochor b'dibur echad. That somehow, because of the miracle of Sinai, when all things were miraculous, so Zohar and Shomer was uttered simultaneously. But this raises another problem discussed by the Mefarshim, and that is that that's the fourth commandment, Shabbos. The first two commandments, Kaviyachal, were uttered from heaven. But after hearing the second commandment, Lo Yiyalecha, it's Porcha Nishmosam. They couldn't hear anymore. The experience was too overwhelming for human beings to endure. So they said, Dabir Atom Moshe, you teach us the rest. You hear what heaven has to say, and you'll transmit it to us. So that the last 8 of the commandments, so to speak, were said to the Jewish people by Moshe Rabbeinu. did Moshe Rabbeinu have the mess also of Shomar v'Zochar b'Dibur Echad Ne'emar? And that's a discussion. I once had a discussion with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. Rabbi Yaakov was into all of these things. He has it in his Sefer Emes Li'Yaakov. So he said, even if we say that Zochar v'Shomar b'Dibur Echad Nemru, it was heard and recited simultaneously, both words together. What was written in the Luchos? Could not be both written simultaneously. It could be heard simultaneously, it could be spoken, would be that miracle, but what was written? And he was of the opinion that in the Luchos was written Shomer and not Zochar. And to a certain extent, that's what we say on Shabbos, right? Shnei Luchos Avonim Horid Biyodo V'chosuv Bohem. It's written in them Shmir of Shabbos V'chein Kosuv B'Soros Secha. And what was written in the Luchos is written in your Torah. Yishomru B'nei Yisrael Shabbos Adoroso. So that's another area of discussion as to what actually was written in the Luchos. And it's fascinating that we really have no tradition regarding it. And then the last of the commandments, Lo Tachmod. So in this week's Parsha, it appears differently. Lo Titave, which has a different ring to it than Lo Sachmod. And the Gaon of Vilna points out that there are no synonyms in Hebrew. Every word has its own exact nuance and meaning. So even though Lo Sachmod and Lo Sisave have the same general connotation, that you shall not desire something that is not yours, but the verb that's used, those are different verbs. And they are not exactly the same. So, and also in the Luchos, in the commandments that exist in this week's Parsha, Lo Tisava is expanded upon. A longer explanation or list, so to speak, than it existed in Parashat Yisro. So those are all problems, right? They're all issues that Torah issues that have been discussed for millennia, and all sorts of approaches have been given as to how to, so to speak, solve these problems, if they are at all capable of being solved. Then we have another issue regarding Kriyas HaTorah when we read the Aseret HaDvarim. So there's something that's called Tam Elyon and something that's called Tam Tachton. The trop is different. In Tam Elyon, the notes are different. than they are. So in the Chumoshim that we have, the Hebrew Publishing Company Chumoshim, so it was always printed with Tam Tachton. But I remember from my youth, the Balei Kriya always read the Tam Elyon. And the stops were different. Here in Eretz Yisrael, they follow the Shita, the Gaon, pretty much, here in Yerushalayim, that it should always be read B'Tam Tachton. We never read B'Tam Elyon. Even Shavuos morning. There are those that Shavuos read B'Tam Elyon, but the real hard, fast Gaonim, it's a B'Tam Tachton all the time. And I have never decided on the matter, so that whatever the Balkori does is wrong. But I think that our Balkori, Rabbi Lifshitz, reads always B'Tam Tachton, except on Shavuos morning he did read B'Tam Elyon. So there's a great deal of mystery that surrounds the Aseret HaDvarim in many different areas. And it's very interesting that on something that's so basic to our tradition and our faith, there is no real clarity as to what it said and how it was written and how it should be pronounced and how it should be sung. But that's the situation as it is. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Rotza Kadosh Baruch Hu Zakus es Yisrael Leficha Chibur Lahem Torah Mitzvot V'Ner Adonai Chafetz Zman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.